Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to part 2 of Fear is the Mark of a Slave. If you like our content, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Now, another important way to overcome our fears is to find a meaningful purpose which either dilutes or gives you a compelling reason to overcome them. Having a higher purpose puts our fears into perspective. For me, for example, I wanted to be an SAS patrol commander, so I knew that I had to learn to do things like learn to speak in public. Now, part of our job was also to be able to speak in front of people from different cultures, from different nationalities who spoke different languages in different parts of the world. So to prepare myself to become hopefully a future patrol commander, I had to learn new skill sets that will enable me to communicate and operate and be effective in those environments. So I took it upon myself to enroll in a speech and drama course, and I also joined a Toastmasters club to ensure that I was put in a position where I had to consistently speak to strangers on a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. The speech and drama course I did was at a local university. I was actually studying speech and drama with a bunch of budding thespians who were training to be actors. Because I admired our leadership so much, this goal became very important to me and drove me to doing whatever it takes to overcome any fears or any weaknesses. And having this perspective is important because it gives purpose to doing things which make us better, especially difficult things. Now, the more consequential and meaningful our purpose, then the easier it is for us to put our fears into perspective. The greater the perceived threats we face and overcome, then the better we are at dealing with threats of less consequence. And these include things like worrying about what people think of us, or worrying about failure or making a mistake. These are things which aren't as important as we initially thought. Dealing with higher order threats makes the less consequential things easier to manage, if not redundant. And the better we get at managing our perception of threats, the more brain space, the more bandwidth we have in dealing with those threats. We become inoculated to it, and therefore we can act more effectively. This is in effect what existential threats do for us. An example of this is what happened during 9/11 and the threat that this attack posed to our way of life. It made some people realize that what they thought was consequential was not really that consequential, to the point where it made political parties forget their differences and come together for this common goal of fighting terrorism. Events like this put less important issues into perspective, where we can objectively see the problems better for what they are. Now, from my perspective, when it came to deploying to war, I understood that I was a small, expendable cog in a large, complex machine. This machine was designed to enact national policy on a global level, and I perceived that the stakes and the consequences of what we were doing was of the highest order, of the highest priority, for the greater good of the greatest number of people. I believed that I was serving in the best unit to have the most effect, and this made me, and I would argue all of us, more willing to commit our lives to high risk, high consequence situations. And these are situations where there's significant potential for loss of life. Now, of course, we were very confident in our training, skills and knowledge, but it put death and the fear of death into a better perspective for us. And also made me realize that thinking about death in this way was actually constructive and liberating. And it gave weight to Marcus Aurelius' quote, Mento More, which means remember you will die. I found it liberating because it tells us to live life every day as though it's our last, to be grateful for everything we enjoy about our lives, which includes the difficult things that test us and make us grow. We understood that we were there to execute high-risk missions in the interests of our country. We also knew that based on the experiences of World War I and World War II, because our very society was at threat, elite troops were often tasked with suicide missions where there was little hope of getting back, little hope of surviving. And we were good with that because we perceived that these were the missions that counted. We'd still always strive to ensure that everyone on our team got back safely, and we were also willing to do this at the cost of our own lives. You can see parallels in this situation where parents willingly put themselves in harm's way for their children because their responsibility to their children overrides their responsibility to keep themselves alive. So a higher calling of responsibility requires a higher level of sacrifice. The greater we perceive the stakes of the situation and our responsibilities to effectively contribute or participate in those situations, then the more adept we become at emotional control. In effect, what it says is that if we are willing to take on more responsibility, more profound responsibility for higher consequence situations, then through experience, it helps us manage fear by giving us better perspective. Now, it's not that it alleviates fear or eliminates fear completely, but it assists us to achieve a perspective that enables us to view that risk a lot better. Facing the fear of low consequence activities like public speaking or worrying about what people think of us becomes far less stressful. So striving for something greater than yourself, like seeking a life of service and sacrifice, can become a pathway to overcoming the worst fears you hold. If you understand the deeper purpose or your why, it helps you overcome many of the barriers like fear which hold you back. Now, these are barriers you put on yourself through your own flawed perception of yourself and the world around you. So taking on more responsibility becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it allows you to be more capable, and the more capable you become, the more confident you become in managing threats. So in this way, you can start to evolve fear as becoming a weapon for you. In fact, the highest functioning operators in the world use fear as a tool to improve and evolve. They use it as a trigger to act. In most people, fear triggers overwhelm or the instinctive reaction to freeze, retreat, or shy away. Elite level operators condition themselves to retain more appropriate responses in the event of that stimulus occurring. Now, certain stimuli require different responses. For example, the sudden and unexpected threat of physical harm would require an immediate and overwhelming reaction of speed, aggression, and violence of action to counter that threat. Now, other stimuli may simply require adopting a defensive position to gain as much information as you possibly can before going on with the next step. Either way, the idea is to act more appropriately when something evokes that response. The goal is to immediately act more appropriately given the threat. So fear serves as a trigger for action. And as soon as we experience fear, we can use it as a trigger to immediately go into action and address it and overcome it. And this way we slowly eliminate that fear from our lives because we know we can deal with it. It also implies that we need to put in the reps to increase the chances of us acting as we have been training ourselves to do in such instances. So in this way, fear can serve us if we know how to use it. Hopefully this provides you with motivation to address your fears. Hopefully this helps you start or continue the journey to exceed your own expectations and your own limitations. For the aspiring SF candidate, overcoming the fear of failure is important to help manage the negative intrinsic thoughts on the selection journey by not letting your emotions stop you from applying, trying out for, training for, enduring, and then finishing the course. But regardless of your trade, craft, profession, sport, or art, facing your fears enables every part of your life. So don't be a slave to your fears. The more you face your fears and any other emotion that holds you back, then the more you contribute, the more you extract out of your life, and the more you enjoy your life. In fact, the more control and the more agency and freedom you have over your life. If your purpose is to make more meaningful contributions to yourself, your family, your team, and your community, then you must overcome those fears which hold you back from doing this. Use your fear to drive you forward, to motivate you, and to work hard at overcoming it.